On the edge of a small village stood Midnight Hill, a place no one dared to visit after sunset. The villagers spoke of a mysterious light that appeared every night, moving slowly across the hill. Some believed it was a ghost, while others thought it was an old man with a lantern. Little Mia, a curious girl from the village, often watched the glow from her bedroom window. She wondered who or what could be wandering there every night. One evening, Mia decided to find out the truth. She took a small lantern of her own and quietly sneaked out of her house. The air grew colder as she climbed the hill, and the soft glow of the mysterious lantern came into view. Her heart raced with fear and excitement. She whispered to herself, "Who is up there? And why do they walk every night?" As Mia approached the light, she saw a tall, shadowy figure holding an old lantern. The glow lit up the face of an elderly man with kind but tired eyes. He looked surprised to see her but did not speak. Instead, he gestured for her to follow him. Mia hesitated, but her curiosity pushed her forward. The man walked silently, his lantern swinging in the cold breeze. He led her to an ancient stone bench near the edge of the hill. Mia gathered her courage and asked, "Why do you come here every night?" The old man sighed deeply and said, "I keep the light burning to protect the village. Long ago, this hill held a terrible secret, and the lantern is the only thing that keeps it asleep." His words sent shivers down her spine. The old man told Mia about the hill's dark past. Many years ago, the villagers had angered the spirits of the forest by cutting down sacred trees. In their rage, the spirits cursed the hill, making it a place of fear and despair. "The lantern's glow keeps the spirits calm," he said. "But if it ever goes out, they might awaken and seek revenge." Mia listened, her eyes wide with both fear and fascination. The man explained that he was the last of the Lantern Keepers, a group that had protected the village for generations. "I am old, child," he said, "and soon I will need someone to carry on this duty." Mia felt a strange mix of fear and responsibility. She wasn't sure if she could be brave enough to take the lantern one day. The wind howled louder as the night deepened, and the lantern's flame flickered. The old man handed Mia the lantern, saying, "Tonight you must hold it steady. The spirits will test your courage at first." Mia's hands trembled, but she tightened her grip and kept the lantern glowing. Suddenly, whispers began to fill the air, like voices carried by the wind. Mia closed her eyes and focused on the warmth of the lantern. The whispers grew louder, turning into cries, but Mia didn't let go. She remembered the old man's words, the light was their shield. As the cries faded, she opened her eyes and saw the man smiling. "You've done well, child," he said. "The spirits know you are not afraid." When the first rays of dawn touched the hill, the old man extinguished his lantern. He looked at Mia with pride and said, "You are braver than I imagined. The hill needs someone like you." Mia felt a mix of pride and uncertainty. She didn't think she could replace the old man, but she also knew she couldn't let the village fall into danger. The old man handed her the lantern, saying, "This light belongs to you now. Keep it safe, and the village will always be protected." As Mia walked back to the village, she felt a newfound strength within her. From that night onward, the villagers noticed that the lantern on the hill still glowed, but now it was carried by a new keeper, the brave little girl named Mia. Mia returned to the hill the following night, holding the lantern tightly in her hands. The air seemed heavier than before, and the rustling of the trees sounded like soft whispers. She tried to stay calm, reminding herself of the old man's words. As she reached the top, the whispers grew louder. as if the hill itself was speaking to her. "Keeper," the voices murmured. "Why do you disturb our rest?" Mia hesitated, but then replied bravely, "I am here to protect the village. I carry the light to keep peace." The whispers softened, and a cool breeze surrounded her. It was as if the spirits were testing her resolve, and for the first time, she felt like they were watching, not as enemies, but as guardians. That night, the lantern's glow revealed something new, a narrow, overgrown path leading deeper into the hill. Mia felt a pull toward it, as if the light itself wanted her to follow. She hesitated but stepped onto the path. Each step echoed with a soft crunch of leaves, and the air grew colder. The path led to a small stone altar surrounded by wildflowers glowing faintly in the lantern's light. Carved into the stone were words Mia couldn't understand, but she felt their meaning. It was a place of offering, a sacred spot to appease the spirits. She realized that the hill was more than a curse. It was a bond between the villagers and the unseen world. As Mia stood near the altar, the whispers returned, louder this time. They spoke of a danger approaching the village, a threat greater than any before. The spirits warned her that the lantern alone might not be enough to protect everyone. Strength comes not just from light, but from unity, they said. Mia realized that the village had grown distant from the hill's history. The people had forgotten the old traditions and the importance of harmony with nature. She knew she had to bring the villagers together to face this new challenge. With determination in her heart, she promised the spirits, "I will make them remember." The next morning, Mia gathered the villagers at the base of the hill. Holding the lantern high, she told them about her nights on the hill, the spirits, and the warning she had received. At first, the villagers were skeptical, but as Mia spoke, her courage inspired them. They began to see the lantern as more than a light. It was a symbol of their bond with the land. The villagers worked together to restore the hill's sacred spots, planting flowers and cleaning the paths. They lit small lanterns in their homes each night, showing the spirits their unity and respect. Mia felt a sense of pride as she saw the village come alive with hope and purpose. On the final night, Mia returned to the hill, the lantern glowing brighter than ever. The whispers were soft now, almost like a lullaby. The spirits seemed at peace, their presence calm and comforting. Mia placed the lantern on the stone altar and sat beside it, gazing at the stars. The old man's voice echoed in her mind, "The light belongs to those who carry it with courage and kindness." She realized that her journey as the lantern keeper was only the beginning. The hill and the village were connected, and she was the bridge that held them together. From that night on, the glow of the lantern never faded, and the story of the brave keeper was told for generations to come. One calm night, as Mia sat by the stone altar, she noticed a shadow moving in the distance. Her heart skipped a beat as the figure came closer. It was not a spirit, but a young boy from the village. He introduced himself as Ben, a curious child who had been watching her climb the hill every night. "I want to help," Ben said shyly, looking at the lantern. At first, Mia was unsure. The hill was not a place for the faint-hearted. But seeing the determination in his eyes, she handed him a small candle and said, "If you're brave enough, light this and walk with me." Together, they began their journey around the hill, the light of the lantern guiding them through the shadows. As Mia and Ben walked the winding paths of the hill, the whispers returned. This time they sounded gentler, almost welcoming. The boy looked at Mia nervously, but she smiled and said, "Stay close. The light will protect us." With two lights shining, the hill felt different, less eerie and more alive. The spirits seemed to acknowledge the presence of the new keeper in training. The lantern's glow reflected in Ben's wide eyes, and for the first time Mia felt less alone. She realized that the lantern's burden didn't have to be hers alone. Together, they could keep the peace and perhaps inspire others to join them. One night, as Mia carried the lantern, she noticed a faint mark glowing on her hand. It was a symbol she had seen carved into the stone altar. When she showed it to Ben, he gasped. "It's the mark of the keeper," he whispered. "The hill has chosen you." The mark was warm to the touch, and its glow pulsed like a heartbeat. Mia felt a mix of pride and responsibility. The hill was recognizing her efforts, and with it came a deeper connection to the spirits. She wondered if Ben would one day bear the same mark. For now, she decided to guide him, teaching him the ways of the hill and the secrets of the lantern. One stormy evening, dark clouds gathered over the hill, and thunder echoed through the air. Mia hesitated, but Ben convinced her they couldn't leave the lantern unlit. Together they climbed the hill, their lights flickering in the strong wind. The storm seemed to awaken the spirits, their whispers turning into urgent cries. At the altar, the lantern's flames struggled against the howling wind. Mia shielded it with her hands while Ben stood beside her, holding his candle steady. "We must keep the light alive," Mia shouted. Their combined strength kept the flame burning, and as the storm calmed, a soft glow spread across the hill. The spirits' voices faded into peaceful silence once again. The next morning, as Mia and Ben stood by the altar, they noticed something unusual. A small crystal lay at its base, glowing faintly in the sunlight. When Mia picked it up, the whispers returned, this time filled with gratitude. "This is our gift," they said, "a token of your bravery and unity." The crystal was warm and seemed to hum with energy. Mia realized it was not just a gift but a tool. It could amplify the lantern's glow and protect the hill for generations to come. She placed the crystal in the lantern, and its light grew brighter than ever, spreading a golden hue across the hill. With the crystal in the lantern, the hill felt different, lighter, safer, and more alive. The villagers began visiting the hill again, bringing offerings of flowers and candles to honor the spirits. Mia and Ben became symbols of courage and unity, inspiring others to protect the bond between the village and the hill. The old man's prophecy came true. Mia had become the keeper, but not alone. With Ben by her side and the villagers' support, the hill's light would never fade. As the sun set that evening, Mia stood at the altar, the lantern glowing brighter than ever, and whispered, "The light will always shine one quiet night." As Mia sat beside the glowing lantern, she felt a strange pull. Closing her eyes, she saw a vision of fiery shadow descending upon the village, its darkness consuming everything in its path. The spirits' voices echoed in her mind, warning her of an impending threat. When she opened her eyes, Ben was watching her. "What's wrong?" he asked. Mia explained the vision, her voice trembling. Ben's eyes widened with fear, but then steadied. "We faced storms and whispers. We can face this too," he said firmly. His courage gave Mia hope, and together they vowed to prepare for whatever was coming. The days grew darker, and a strange unease settled over the village. Animals acted skittish, and the air carried an unnatural chill. The villagers began to notice the change and turned to Mia for guidance. "The lantern's light must grow stronger," she told them. "But we can't do it alone." Mia and Ben organized nightly vigils on the hill, inviting the villagers to join. Together they lit candles and placed them along the paths. The collective light seemed to push back the darkness, but Mia knew it was only the beginning. The shadow from her vision was still coming, and its arrival was inevitable. One fateful night, the hill grew eerily silent. Even the whispers of the spirits faded, replaced by an overwhelming stillness. Mia stood by the altar, lantern in hand, as a dark figure emerged from the forest. Its form was shapeless, a swirling mass of shadows that seemed to devour the light around it. Ben stood beside her, holding his candle tightly. The villagers, gathered below, watched in fear. The shadow moved closer, and the lantern's glow dimmed slightly. Mia raised the lantern high, her voice steady despite her fear. "We are not afraid," she declared. The shadow paused, as if considering her words. The villagers, inspired by Mia's bravery, began lighting their own candles. One by one, the small flames flickered to life, creating a sea of light at the base of the hill. The lantern responded, its glow growing brighter as the people's unity strengthened it. The shadow hissed and recoiled, unable to withstand the combined power of the light. Mia and Ben stepped forward, their lights merging into a radiant beam that pierced the darkness. The shadow let out a final, echoing cry before dissolving into the night. The hill was safe once more, bathed in a golden glow. After the shadow's defeat, the lantern began to change. The crystal within it pulsed with energy, and the glow became softer but more enduring. The spirits spoke to Mia and Ben, their voices filled with gratitude. "The hill is now protected by the strength of the people," they said. Mia realized that the lantern was no longer just a tool, it had become a symbol of hope and unity. Its light would guide the village for generations, a reminder of the courage they had shown. She smiled at Ben, knowing their bond as keepers had created something timeless. In the days that followed, the hill transformed into a place of celebration. The villagers planted flowers, built stone pathways, and created a shrine around the altar. The lantern, now glowing softly but steadily, was placed at the heart of the shrine, where it could watch over the village forever. Mia and Ben continued their nightly walks, not out of duty, but out of love for the hill. The whispers became a gentle hum, a song of peace and gratitude. The story of the lantern keepers spread far and wide, inspiring others to find courage and unity. And as the years passed, the light of the lantern never faded, a beacon of hope for all who saw it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a stranger arrived at the hill. He was an elderly man, dressed in a long, dark cloak, with piercing eyes that seemed to look right through Mia and Ben. "You've done well to protect the hill," he said, his voice deep and gravelly. But the true test is yet to come. The man handed Mia a small, silver amulet. "This will shield you from the darkness, but only if you trust in each other." The shadow was only the beginning. Something greater is stirring beyond these hills. Before Mia could ask more, the man vanished into the forest, leaving her and Ben with more questions than answers. In the following nights, the hill seemed to grow restless. The lantern's glow flickered unexpectedly, and the whispers of the spirits became hurried and disjointed. Even the villagers began to notice the unease, their once bright faces now clouded with worry. Mia held the silver amulet tightly, wondering what danger the stranger had spoken of. Ben, though brave, was also troubled. "If there's something worse than the shadow, how can we stop it?" he asked. Mia placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll face it together, just as we always have," but deep inside, she shared his fear. One fateful night, the air grew heavy, and the hill was plunged into an unnatural darkness. The lantern's light dimmed to a faint glow, struggling against an unseen force. Mia and Ben rushed to the altar, only to find the crystal within the lantern cracked, its light flickering weakly. From the shadows, a new entity emerged, taller, more menacing, and surrounded by an aura of cold dread. Its presence seemed to drain the strength from Mia and Ben. "The light will not save you this time," it growled. For the first time, Mia felt the weight of true despair, but she refused to let it consume her. Mia knew they couldn't face this enemy alone. She and Ben ran to the village, calling for help. "The hill is in danger," she cried. The villagers hesitated, fear evident in their eyes. But then an elderly woman stepped forward, holding a lantern of her own. "We have faced darkness before, and we will do it again," she said firmly. One by one, the villagers joined Mia and Ben, carrying candles, lanterns, and torches. Together they climbed the hill, their collective light piercing the suffocating darkness. The malevolent entity roared, its form wavering as the light grew stronger. Mia held the silver amulet high, its glow merging with the lantern's faint light. At the altar, Mia placed the amulet inside the lantern. A brilliant flash of light erupted, casting the entire hill in a golden glow. The entity writhed and screamed, its dark form shrinking under the intense brightness. Ben stood beside Mia, holding her hand as the villagers' lights surrounded them, creating a shield of hope and unity. The spirits of the hill joined the fight, their whispers turning into a harmonious chant. The entity let out one final, deafening cry before dissolving into nothingness. The hill was silent once more, but this time the silence was peaceful, like the calm after a storm. With the threat vanquished, the hill became a place of celebration and renewal. The lantern, now repaired and infused with the silver amulet, shone brighter than ever. The villagers built a grand monument around the altar, honoring the courage of Mia, Ben, and all who had stood together. Mia and Ben continued their roles as keepers, but the weight of the task felt lighter. They knew they were not alone. The hill's light was now a shared responsibility, a testament to the strength of unity. And so, the legend of the Lantern Keepers grew, a story of bravery and hope passed down through generations. The hill, now brighter and more vibrant than ever, became a sanctuary for the villagers. Mia and Ben noticed that the spirit's whispers had changed. They no longer warned of danger, but spoke of peace and gratitude. Yet one night, as Mia stood by the lantern, a new whisper reached her ears. "Beyond the hill lies another place in need of light," the voice said softly. Mia felt a tug on her heart, as though the hill itself was urging her to look beyond its boundaries. She shared this with Ben, and together they decided to venture into the unknown. Their journey, it seemed, was far from over. The next morning, Mia and Ben packed their belongings and prepared to leave the hill. The villagers gathered to bid them farewell, their faces filled with both sadness and pride. "The Lantern Keepers belong to the world now," the elder woman said, placing a wreath of flowers around Mia's neck. As they walked into the dense forest, the whispers guided their steps. The path was dark, with towering trees blocking the sunlight, but Mia and Ben carried the lantern, its glow lighting their way. They felt both fear and excitement, knowing that their mission was leading them toward a new chapter of their lives. After days of traveling, Mia and Ben arrived at a small village hidden deep in the forest. It was eerily silent, and the houses were cloaked in shadows. The people moved like ghosts, their faces pale and their eyes hollow. "This place has lost its light," Mia whispered. They approached an old man sitting by a well. "What happened here?" Ben asked gently. The man looked at them with weary eyes. "The darkness took our flame," he said, pointing to an empty pedestal in the village square. Mia and Ben exchanged a glance, realizing that the lantern they carried might be the key to restoring hope. Mia and Ben placed their lantern on the empty pedestal. Its golden light spilled into the square, casting long shadows that began to retreat. The villagers gathered cautiously, their faces lighting up with curiosity and wonder. "It's been so long since we've seen light," a young girl said, her voice trembling with emotion. The lantern's glow seemed to awaken something within the people. They began lighting their own small lanterns and candles, passing the flames to one another. The village, once shrouded in despair, now glowed with warmth and life. Mia and Ben watched, their hearts swelling with pride and joy. Just as the village seemed to come alive, a dark figure appeared on the horizon. It was a shadowy creature, similar to the one they had faced on Midnight Hill, but larger and more menacing. The villagers froze in fear, their newfound hope flickering like weak flames. Mia and Ben stood firm, raising the lantern high. "We are stronger together," Mia called out to the villagers. Slowly, they gathered around the pedestal, their lights merging into a shield of brightness. The creature hesitated, unable to penetrate the wall of light. With a mighty roar, it vanished into the forest, defeated by their unity. The village celebrated late into the night, their laughter and songs echoing through the forest. The lantern on the pedestal burned brightly, its light a symbol of their shared strength. Mia and Ben were honored as saviors, but they knew their journey wasn't over. Before leaving, they entrusted the villagers with a piece of the lantern's crystal, teaching them how to nurture its glow. "This light belongs to you now," Mia said. As they walked away, hand in hand, the whispers guided them once more. The world was vast, and there were still places in need of light. Mia and Ben walked for days, their hearts filled with both excitement and uncertainty. The whispers had led them to this new path, yet they had no clear direction of where to go next. As they traveled, the world around them seemed to change. The trees grew taller, and the air grew heavier with magic. One morning, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, they reached the top of a hill. Beneath them lay a vast valley, covered in thick fog. The whispers grew louder, guiding them toward the mist. "This is where the light is needed most," Mia said softly. Ben nodded, and together they descended into the fog, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As Mia and Ben entered the fog, they felt the presence of something ancient, something forgotten. The air was thick with sadness, and strange shadows flickered just beyond their vision. "It feels like we're walking through memories," Ben said, his voice barely above a whisper. The fog parted for a moment, revealing a ruined city. Its buildings crumbled, its streets empty. At the heart of the city stood a great stone temple, its doors wide open. "This is where it all began," Mia murmured. They made their way toward the temple, sensing that the answers they sought lay within its walls. Inside the temple, the air was cold and still. The walls were lined with carvings, depicting a long-forgotten civilization that had once thrived in the valley. But there was something unsettling about the images they showed people trapped in darkness, their faces twisted in fear. At the center of the temple was a large, empty pedestal. Mia placed the lantern upon it, its light flickering in the cold air. The moment the lantern's glow touched the pedestal, the ground trembled, and a voice echoed through the temple. You have come to restore the light. But first, you must face the truth. The walls of the temple seemed to come alive, shifting and moving as the voice spoke. Mia and Ben stood frozen, watching as the images on the walls changed. They saw the story of an ancient people who had once held great power but had succumbed to greed and darkness. In their lust for control, they had extinguished the very light that had protected them. Mia's heart sank as she realized the truth. This temple was built to hold the light, she sighed, her voice trembling. But it was also where the darkness was born. Ben took her hand, and together they knew that their mission was not just to protect the light, but to prevent history from repeating itself. The ground shook again, this time violently, and a dark figure emerged from the shadows. It was the same entity they had faced before, but now it was even stronger, more powerful, and more determined. You cannot save this world, the figure hissed. The darkness has already taken root, but Mia and Ben stood tall, their hands gripping the lantern. The light will always find a way, Mia said, her voice firm. The lantern's glow intensified, pushing back the darkness that surrounded them. The entity howled in fury, but it was no match for the combined strength of Mia, Ben, and the lantern. With a final burst of light, the entity dissolved, leaving nothing but silence. With the darkness vanquished, the fog began to lift, revealing the once great city beneath the valley. Slowly, the people returned, their faces filled with hope. The temple, once a place of despair, now stood as a symbol of renewal. Mia and Ben had restored the light, and with it, the promise of a brighter future. As they watched the valley come alive once more, Mia and Ben knew that their journey was far from over. There would always be places in need of light, and they would always be there to guide them. The lantern had become more than just a symbol, it was a promise, one that would live on for generations to come. As Mia and Ben stood in the heart of the revived city, the air seemed to hum with a new energy. The lantern's glow was brighter than ever, and it felt as though the light had awakened something deep within the land. The ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse, as though it was alive and responding to the return of hope. Do you feel that? Ben asked, his voice filled with awe. Mia nodded, sensing the very same energy. The people of the city gathered around them, their faces radiant with joy and wonder. It was clear that the light had not only restored the land, but also the people's spirits. This was a beginning, not an end. Days passed as the city began to flourish once again. New life returned to the fields, the air became fresher, and the people rebuilt their homes with renewed strength. One evening, a group of travelers arrived at the city gates. They were keepers of their own lanterns, just as Mia and Ben had been. They told stories of other lands where darkness had taken hold and how they too had been sent to bring light back to the world. We've heard of your journey, one of the keepers said. The light is spreading, and we have come to join you in your mission. Mia and Ben welcomed the keepers, realizing that their journey was part of a larger story, one that spanned across many lands, many lives. Together, they shared their experiences, learning that the darkness they had faced was not a solitary force, but something that had touched every corner of the world. The keepers had each faced their own trials and had succeeded in spreading light in their lands. We have a new path now, Mia said. One that leads us to unite the keepers, to bring light to every shadowed place. Ben agreed, his heart swelling with a new sense of purpose. The world was vast, but it was not beyond hope. Together, they could ignite the flames of light in every corner of it. The group of keepers set out on their next journey, traveling across forests, mountains, and seas. Everywhere they went, the lantern's glow inspired those they met to believe in the possibility of change. Villages once cloaked in despair now welcomed them, eager for the light they carried. As they moved from place to place, Mia and Ben saw how unity was the true power behind the lantern's light. It wasn't just the lantern that created change, it was the people, working together, bringing hope to each other. It was the spark of compassion, of caring, that made the light shine the brightest. But even as the keepers spread light across the world, the darkness was not ready to surrender. A new threat arose, one more insidious and cunning than before. In the deepest shadows, the darkness had begun to gather, regaining its strength. The people who had once welcomed the light began to feel doubt and fear creeping back into their hearts. One evening, as Mia and Ben set up camp by the edge of a vast forest, a strange silence filled the air. It was too quiet. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet. Dark shapes began to rise from the earth, twisted and writhing. "It's not over," Mia whispered, her grip tightening on the lantern. "The darkness is fighting back," the shadows advanced, pushing back against the light with all their might. The keepers stood firm, their lanterns glowing brightly in the face of the oncoming storm. "We will not give up," Ben said, his voice unwavering. "We fight for the light, for all those who still believe." Mia held the lantern high, its light surging stronger than ever before. The shadows recoiled, unable to match the intensity of the combined strength of the keepers. With a final burst of light, the darkness dissipated, fading into the air like smoke. The land once again was free. Mia and Ben stood, exhausted but victorious. They had won, not just for themselves, but for the world, a world where light would always find a way, no matter how dark the shadows may be. The world had changed once again. With the darkness pushed back and the light now shining brighter than ever, there was a peaceful stillness in the air. The once chaotic cities and villages were now thriving, filled with laughter and joy. Mia and Ben stood at the edge of a wide valley, watching as the people rebuilt their homes, their lives, and their futures. But even in this peaceful moment, there was a lingering sense of unease. "The darkness may be gone for now," Mia said, "but we must remain vigilant." Ben nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. "The light must never be allowed to fade again." And so, their journey continued, not as a quest to defeat the darkness, but to ensure that the light would always remain. As the seasons changed, Mia and Ben traveled from place to place, helping those in need, spreading the light. One evening, as they camped by the river, Mia noticed a strange glow in the distance. It was a flickering light, similar to the lantern they had carried for so long. Curious, they decided to investigate, knowing that wherever there was light, there would be a story to tell. When they reached the source of the glow, they found an old woman sitting by a campfire, her own lantern glowing brightly beside her. She smiled when she saw them. "I've been waiting for you," she said, her voice soft yet strong. "The light has been passed down for generations, and now it's your turn to protect it." The old woman, whose name was Alara, explained that she was the last of a long line of guardians who had been entrusted with the care of the lantern. "I've been watching over it, passing the knowledge to those who would carry on the legacy," she said. "But now it's time for you both to take up the mantle." Mia and Ben were both humbled and amazed. They had thought their journey had ended, but now they realized their mission was far from over. Alara showed them how to care for the lantern, how to keep its light strong and steady, and how to protect it from those who would seek to extinguish it. They were now not just keepers, but guardians of the light itself. Under Ilara's guidance, Mia and Ben learned the ancient ways of the Guardians. They spent weeks training, mastering the art of protecting the lantern and the light it carried. Ilara taught them how to read the signs of the land, how to listen to the whispers of the wind, and how to detect the smallest trace of darkness that might be creeping in. They traveled with Ilara to many distant lands, each more beautiful and more challenging than the last. In each place they found people who needed their help, and each time the light grew stronger, spreading hope and healing to those who had been lost in darkness. The more they traveled, the more they realized that the light was not a thing to be protected, but a force to be shared. One day, while walking through a dense forest, Mia and Ben came across a hidden village that had been abandoned for many years. The people here had once been strong, full of life, but the darkness had taken everything from them. Ilara told them that the village had once been the heart of the Guardian's order, but it had been lost when the darkness first came. This village, Ilara said, was where the light began. It's time to bring it back with her guidance. Mia and Ben rebuilt the village, restoring it to its former glory. The lantern's light shone brighter than ever, filling the village with warmth and life. The people returned, and the village once again became a center of hope. As years passed, Mia and Ben grew wiser, and their bond with the lantern deepened. They became known throughout the lands as the keepers of the light, traveling far and wide to ensure that the light would never fade. The legacy of the lantern lived on in them, and in every person they helped. One day, while standing atop a hill, looking out over the lands they had saved, Mia turned to Ben. "It's not just about keeping the light alive anymore, is it?" she asked. Ben smiled, his heart full of pride. "No," he said. "It's about ensuring that everyone has a light to carry, so that they can pass it on to others, and with that, they set off once more, ready for the next adventure, knowing that as long as there was light, there would always be hope." Mia and Ben journeyed deeper into the heart of the enchanted forest, guided by the light of their lantern. The trees here were ancient, their trunks twisted and gnarled, their leaves shimmering with a golden hue. As they walked, they could feel the magic of the place surrounding them. It was a peaceful feeling, but one that also carried a sense of mystery. As years passed, Mia and Ben grew wiser, and their bond with the lantern deepened. They became known throughout the lands as the keepers of the light, traveling far and wide to ensure that the light would never fade. The legacy of the lantern lived on in them, and in every person they helped. One day, while standing atop a hill, looking out over the lands they had saved, Mia turned to Ben. "It's not just about keeping the light alive anymore, is it?" she asked. Ben smiled, his heart full of pride. "No," he said. "It's about ensuring that everyone has a light to carry, so that they can pass it on to others, and with that, they set off once more, ready for the next adventure, knowing that as long as there was light, there would always be hope." Mia and Ben journeyed deeper into the heart of the enchanted forest, guided by the light of their lantern. The trees here were ancient, their trunks twisted and gnarled, their leaves shimmering with a golden hue. As they walked, they could feel the magic of the place surrounding them. It was a peaceful feeling, but one that also carried a sense of mystery. "We're getting closer," Mia whispered. "The whispers of the wind are growing stronger," Ben nodded, sensing the same pull. It was as though the forest itself was calling them, leading them towards something important. As they ventured further, they came across a hidden clearing, where a massive tree stood, its roots deep in the earth. The tree radiated an aura of ancient power. The ancient tree stood tall, its branches reaching toward the sky like arms welcoming the light. Mia and Ben approached it carefully, sensing that this tree held a secret something vital to their mission. As they circled the tree, they found a small door carved into the base of the trunk. "This is it," Ben said, his voice filled with reverence. "This tree has been waiting for us." Mia gently placed her hand on the door, and to her surprise, it creaked open with ease. Inside, the tree's hollow was filled with glowing symbols, each one shimmering with a soft, golden light. It was the heart of the forest, the source of its magic. As they stepped inside the hollow, the symbols began to glow brighter, casting light in all directions. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the darkness. Mia and Ben exchanged glances, their hearts racing. They had faced many challenges before, but this was something different. A figure appeared in the center of the glowing symbols, a tall figure dressed in robes of shimmering silver. It was the guardian of the forest, and it spoke again. "To prove your worth, you must demonstrate your understanding of light and darkness." The guardian's eyes glowed with an eerie light as it raised its hand. "You must face the shadows within yourselves," it said. "Only then can you truly understand the power of the light." Suddenly, the shadows around them began to twist and move, forming shapes that reflected their deepest fears. Mia's own shadow stretched and twisted, taking the form of her past struggles, while Ben's shadow shifted into his doubts about their mission. The trial had begun. Mia took a deep breath, focusing on the light of the lantern. "We cannot let the shadows define us," she said, her voice steady. "The light is within us all. It will guide us through the darkness." Ben stood beside her, nodding in agreement. Together, they held the lantern high, and the shadows began to retreat. As the shadows faded, the guardian stepped forward, its silver robes shimmering with approval. "You have passed the test," the guardian said. "You have shown that you understand the balance of light and darkness, and that you carry the strength to guide others through it." Mia and Ben felt a sense of peace wash over them as the guardian placed a glowing stone in each of their hands. "These stones will enhance your lantern's power," the guardian explained. "They will allow you to bring light to even the darkest places." With a final nod, the guardian vanished, leaving Mia and Ben standing in the center of the glowing symbols. The forest around them seemed to breathe, alive with magic. They knew that their journey was far from over, but they had grown stronger, more united in their mission. With the guardian's blessing and the powerful stones in their hands, Mia and Ben set out once more, their hearts filled with hope. The lantern's light was brighter than ever, and they knew that with it, they could face whatever darkness lay ahead. As they walked through the forest, Mia glanced at Ben. "We've come so far," she said, "but there's still so much to do." Ben smiled, his eyes shining with determination. "As long as we have the light, we can do anything." And so, with the ancient stones glowing softly in their hands, they stepped onto the next leg of their journey, knowing that the path ahead would be full of challenges, but with the light guiding their way, they were ready for whatever came next. Mia and Ben journeyed deeper into lands they had never seen before. The air was thick with the scent of wildflowers, but there was something ancient about the place, something untouched by time. The trees here were different, tall and twisted, with bark that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. "We've entered the forgotten lands," Ben said, his voice quiet. "Few have ever come this far." The land felt alive, as if it were watching them. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled, and the wind picked up, carrying whispers from the past. Mia felt a chill run down her spine. "What is that?" she asked, but Ben could only shake his head. They pressed on, following the path that seemed to lead them deeper into the heart of the land. As they walked through the dense forest, shadows began to gather around them. The lantern's light flickered, as if struggling against the growing darkness. From the shadows, figures began to emerge, tall, ethereal wraiths with hollow eyes, their forms made of mist and darkness. They floated around Mia and Ben, their whispers louder now, filling the air with their sorrowful voices. "They are the lost souls of this land," Mia said, her voice trembling. "Wraiths who never found the light." One of the wraiths floated close to her, its ghostly hand reaching out. "You are not like us," it whispered. "You carry the light that we lost long ago." Mia stepped back, the light of the lantern brightening to push the wraiths away. "We will not let the darkness take us," she declared, her voice strong. The wraiths strong. The wraiths hesitated but did not retreat. Instead, they circled closer, their voices growing louder. "You do not understand," one of them wailed. "We were once light bearers, just like you. We were the guardians of the lantern, but we failed, and now we are cursed to wander this land forever." The wraiths began to cry, their sobs echoing through the forest. Mia and Ben looked at each other, feeling the weight of their words. "We won't fail," Ben said, stepping forward. "We won't let the light fade." He raised the lantern high, its glow now brighter than ever. "We carry the light for you, and we will not stop until we free you from this curse." The wraiths fell silent, staring at the light with longing. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet cracked open, revealing a hidden stone chamber deep below. The wraiths retreated, their forms dissipating into the air. "The light must reach the heart of this place," Mia said, her voice filled with determination. "Only then will the curse be lifted." Mia and Ben descended into the chamber, where ancient symbols covered the walls. In the center of the chamber was a pedestal, and atop it lay a stone lantern, much like the one they carried. But this lantern was different. Its light was dim, flickering weakly, as though it had been drained of its power. Mia placed her lantern next to the stone one, allowing its light to merge with the ancient lantern. As the light from Mia's lantern touched the stone lantern, a brilliant glow filled the chamber. The symbols on the walls began to glow as well, and the wraiths returned, their forms slowly solidifying as the light grew stronger. The darkness that had once consumed them began to fade, and the sorrowful whispers turned into soft sighs of relief. The wraiths, now freed from their curse, gathered around Mia and Ben. "You have restored what we lost," one of the wraiths said, its voice now full of gratitude. "The light will never fade again. As long as you carry it." The wraiths slowly disappeared into the light, their forms dissolving into the air like mist at dawn. The chamber fell silent, and Mia and Ben stood there, feeling the weight of their accomplishment. With the forgotten lands now bathed in light, Mia and Ben made their way back to Midnight Hill, their hearts filled with a sense of peace. The lantern's glow was brighter than ever, and the land around them seemed to breathe with life. The journey had been long and difficult, but they had restored the light to a land that had been lost in darkness for so long. As they reached the top of Midnight Hill, Mia turned to Ben. "We've done it," she said softly. "The light will never fade again." Ben smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "The lantern is more than just a light. It's a symbol of hope, and as long as we carry it, we'll never let that hope fade." Together they stood atop Midnight Hill, watching the light shine brightly, knowing that their mission was far from over. The lantern would always guide them, and they would always protect the light for as long as it burned. There would always be hope. The morning sun began to rise, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. Mia and Ben stood quietly at the top of Midnight Hill, the lantern between them glowing softly, its light now steady and calm. The forest around them had transformed overnight. The trees were greener and the air was fresher, as if the land itself had been reborn. "It's over," Mia whispered, her voice filled with a sense of finality. "We've given them peace," Ben nodded, his eyes reflecting the tranquility that now surrounded them. "Yes," he replied, "but our journey isn't over. The light must continue to shine, and we must always protect it." The wind rustled gently through the leaves, carrying with it the feeling that their mission had only just begun. As they descended from Midnight Hill, the path before them seemed different. It was no longer just a road through the forest, it felt like a new beginning, leading them to places they had yet to discover. The lantern in Mia's hand flickered, its light still strong but now guiding them towards something new. "What do you think is ahead?" Mia asked, glancing at Ben. He smiled, a mix of excitement and wonder in his eyes. "I don't know, but I feel like the lantern will show us the way. Wherever it leads, we follow." With renewed determination, they continued forward, knowing that each step would bring them closer to new adventures and greater challenges. As they walked, they came across a large stone, unlike any they had seen before. It was smooth and round, with strange symbols carved into its surface. The lantern's light grew brighter as they approached, and they could hear a soft whisper coming from the stone, like a voice calling to them from the past. Mia knelt down, touching the stone gently. "Do you hear that?" she asked Ben, her voice barely above a whisper. Ben crouched beside her, his gaze focused on the stone. "It's speaking to us," he said. "This stone has a story to tell." As he placed his hand on the stone, the symbols began to glow, and the whispers became clearer, forming words that only they could understand. The voice from the stone spoke of an ancient order of lantern keepers, protectors of the light who had once roamed the world, guiding those who had lost their way. The stone was a marker, a reminder of the Order's mission to ensure that the lantern's light never faded. "You are the new lantern keepers," the voice said. "The light has chosen you to carry the flame forward." Mia and Ben exchanged a surprised glance. They had always known their journey was special, but now it seemed that their role in this world was even greater than they could have imagined. "We accept," Mia said, her voice filled with a sense of purpose. "We will carry the light." The stone glowed brighter in response, and the whispers faded, leaving them with a new understanding of their place in the world. As they continued their journey, the weather began to change. The sky darkened, and the wind picked up, howling through the trees. Mia and Ben looked around, sensing that something was coming. "The light will be tested," Ben said, his voice steady. "We must be ready." The lantern flickered nervously in Mia's hand, as if it too could feel the approaching storm. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and the air grew thick with tension. The land around them seemed to hold its breath. Mia tightened her grip on the lantern. "We have to stay strong," she said, her voice resolute. "We've faced darkness before, and we'll face it again. But this time, we won't let it win." The storm came quickly, with a rush of wind and a flash of lightning that lit up the sky. The trees around them bent and swayed, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Mia and Ben stood firm, the lantern's light shining brightly through the storm. But as the wind howled louder, they saw something in the distance, figures emerging from the shadows, their faces hidden beneath hoods. "They're coming," Mia said, her voice tense. Ben nodded. "We're not alone anymore. Something dark is out there, and we need to be ready." The figures moved closer, and the storm intensified. Mia and Ben braced themselves, the lantern held high, knowing that the greatest challenge of their journey had just begun. The figures in the distance drew closer, their cloaked forms blending into the swirling darkness of the storm. Mia's heart raced as she gripped the lantern tightly, its light flickering uncertainly. The storm around them grew louder, as if the very world was preparing for the confrontation ahead. "We need to face them," Ben said, his voice steady despite the danger. Mia nodded, taking a deep breath. "We will not let the light be taken from us." The figures stopped a few feet away, their faces hidden in shadow, and in that moment, the air seemed to thicken, charged with a sense of imminent danger. "Who are you?" Mia demanded, her voice firm. The figure at the front slowly lifted its hood, revealing a face that was neither human nor ghost, but something darker, a shadow of forgotten nightmares. The figure spoke, its voice like gravel scraping against stone. "We are the keepers of the forgotten light. You, the new keepers, think you can protect the light forever, but we will take it back as it was once ours." The storm raged harder, thunder cracking across the sky as the other figures stepped forward, revealing faces just as eerie and dark. Ben stepped in front of Mia, holding the lantern high. "You won't take it. The light is not yours anymore. It belongs to those who fight for it, those who believe in its power." The shadow figure laughed, a sound that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. "Foolish children," it said. "You cannot stop what has already been lost." The first shadow figure lunged at them, its hands reaching for the lantern. Mia instinctively held it higher, and the light flared brightly, pushing the figure back. The storm grew fiercer, as if responding to the clash between light and shadow. The other figures joined in, circling Mia and Ben, each one trying to reach the lantern. With each strike of their dark hands, the lantern's light pulsed, sending waves of energy that repelled the attackers. But the figures kept coming, relentless and dark. "We need to hold them off until the light can break through," Mia shouted. Ben nodded, drawing on every ounce of strength. The air around them crackled with energy as they fought to protect the light, refusing to let the shadows take it away. The battle seemed endless, the shadows growing stronger with each passing moment. The storm was no longer just a storm, it was a manifestation of the darkness that surrounded them, and the lantern's light was the only thing holding it back. The thunder rumbled louder, and lightning streaked across the sky, lighting up the battlefield. Mia's arms were growing tired, but she refused to give up. "Ben, we can't keep this up much longer," she gasped, her voice shaky. Ben looked at her, his eyes filled with determination. "We won't fail. The light will endure, and we will protect it no matter what." As the shadows closed in once again, Mia felt a sudden surge of power and energy from within the lantern itself. Mia raised the lantern high above her head, and in that moment, the lantern's light exploded outward, bathing the entire land in a brilliant glow. The shadows screamed in agony as the light washed over them, dissolving their forms into nothingness. The storm began to fade, the clouds breaking apart as the first rays of dawn began to shine through. The darkness had been vanquished, but not without cost. Mia and Ben stood there, breathing heavily, their bodies exhausted from the battle. The lantern's light had saved them, but they knew that the war between light and shadow would continue, and it was up to them to ensure the lantern would always shine brightly. With the shadows vanquished and the storm subsiding, the land slowly began to return to normal. The trees, once twisted and darkened, now stood tall and proud, bathed in the soft light of the dawn. The air felt lighter, the tension easing as the last remnants of the storm faded away. Mia and Ben stood together, watching as the sun rose over Midnight Hill, casting a golden glow over the world below. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but they knew the fight was not truly over. The light must always be protected, and the lantern would guide them on their journey. "We've done it," Mia said softly, her voice filled with quiet satisfaction. "But our work is just beginning." Ben nodded, a smile on his face. "We will always carry the light," he said, "and we will never let it fade together." They turned toward the path ahead, knowing that as long as the lantern burned, there would always be hope. As Mia and Ben began to walk down the hill, they felt a strange sensation, as though unseen eyes were watching them. The forest around them seemed more alive than ever, every rustle in the leaves and every crack of a branch sending a shiver down their spines. It wasn't just the trees or the wind, it felt like something more, something ancient and wise. "There's something else here," Ben whispered, his gaze sweeping the horizon. Mia stopped and listened. "I feel it too," she said, her voice low. Suddenly, they both turned to see shadows moving in the distance, figures cloaked in mystery, standing at the edge of the forest. They did not speak, but their presence was undeniable. The lantern keepers weren't alone. The figures slowly stepped forward, revealing themselves as more than just shadows. They were tall, robed figures, their faces hidden by hoods, yet their eyes glowed with an ethereal light. These were the guardians, the ancient protectors of the lantern's power. They had watched over Midnight Hill for centuries, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. "We have been waiting for you," one of the guardians said, its voice soft but commanding. "The light you protect is not just a beacon for the lost, but a symbol of balance in this world. You are not the first to carry the lantern, but you may be the last." Mia and Ben exchanged a worried glance. "What do you mean?" Mia asked. The guardian stepped closer, its presence both comforting and intimidating. "The darkness is returning. The storm you faced was only a glimpse of what's to come." The guardian gestured for them to follow, leading Mia and Ben deeper into the forest, where the trees grew older and taller, their roots twisting like veins through the earth. The further they went, the more ancient the place seemed. "This is the heart of the land," the guardian explained. "Here, the first lantern keeper set the lantern's flame. It is where the light is strongest, and it is where you must protect it." As they walked, the path became narrower, and the air grew heavier with the weight of history. "What must we do?" Ben asked, his voice steady despite the growing tension. The guardian paused before answering. "You must restore the balance. The darkness is not merely an enemy, it is a force of nature. Without the light, the world would fall into chaos." The lantern flickered in Mia's hand, as though it understood the gravity of their mission. At the end of the path stood a stone altar, surrounded by tall, weathered pillars. The air was thick with the power of the place, and the earth beneath their feet seemed alive. The guardian pointed toward the altar. "To ensure the light remains, you must complete the trials of the keepers. Only then will you truly be ready to protect the lantern from the forces of darkness." Mia and Ben exchanged a nervous glance. "What are the trials?" Mia asked. The guardian's eyes glowed brighter, and the wind began to stir. "The trials will test your heart, your courage, and your ability to stay true to the light. Only those worthy can succeed. Fail, and the darkness will claim the lantern forever. With a deep breath, Mia nodded. We are ready. The trials had begun. The first trial was the trial of the heart. As soon as they stepped forward, the world around them shifted. The forest vanished, replaced by a vast, empty void. A figure appeared before them, a shadow of doubt, a mirror of their deepest fears. Mia and Ben recognized it immediately. It was their own reflection, twisted and darkened by their insecurities and doubts. You are not strong enough to protect the light, the shadow hissed. You have failed before, and you will fail again. Mia felt her heart race, but she did not step back. I won't give up, she said firmly. I will protect the light no matter what. The shadow lunged toward her, but Mia stood her ground, and the light from the lantern burned brighter than ever, pushing the shadow away. With the shadow gone, the void transformed once again, this time into a great chasm. The wind howled as they stood on the edge, looking down into the darkness below. This is the trial of courage, the guardian's voice echoed in their minds. To face your fears and leap into the unknown. Mia's legs wobbled as she gazed at the seemingly bottomless pit. There's no way across, Ben said, his voice tight with fear. But Mia stepped forward, holding the lantern high. The light will guide us, she said. Without a second thought, she took a step into the chasm. To her surprise, the ground beneath her feet held strong, and a glowing path appeared before her. Ben followed closely behind, his heart pounding in his chest. Together, they made their way across, the light guiding their every step. The glowing path led them to a peaceful meadow, the air sweet with the scent of blooming flowers. But beneath the beauty, Mia could feel an unease creeping into her heart. The air seemed too still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Suddenly, the sky darkened, and the ground beneath them trembled. A voice echoed through the meadow, cold and distant. You have passed the trials of heart and courage, but now you must face the trial of the soul, the voice declared. Mia and Ben turned to see an eerie figure emerge from the shadows. It was a dark reflection of themselves, but this time it wasn't just a fear, it was a part of them they had never known, a part of their own soul they had kept hidden. You cannot defeat me, for I am you, the figure whispered. Mia felt a chill run through her body as the figure advanced. It spoke words that shook her to the core, revealing every doubt, every regret, and every mistake she had ever made. You are weak. You have failed many times before. How can you protect the light when you cannot even protect yourself? Ben stepped forward, his eyes hard with determination. Don't listen to it, Mia. This is not who you are. Mia closed her eyes for a moment, focusing on the warmth of the lantern in her hands. The light, the pure light, burned brightly within her. I may have my weaknesses, she said, her voice steady, but I also have the strength to fight. I will not let darkness define me. With those words, Mia raised the lantern high, its light blinding and pure. The dark figure recoiled, the shadows it cast melting away as the light grew stronger. The figure howled in fury, but Mia stood firm, her heart filled with a newfound strength. I choose the light, she declared. The shadow shattered into a million pieces, vanishing into the air. The meadow brightened, the flowers blooming even more brightly, as if the land itself had been healed. Ben smiled at her, his eyes filled with pride. You did it, Mia. You faced your darkness and defeated it. Mia nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace settle over her. We both did, she replied. The guardians, who had silently watched from the edges of the meadow, now stepped forward. Their eyes glowed with approval. You have passed the final trial, and your hearts are pure. The light is yours to protect, but remember its power is not just in the lantern. It lies in the strength of your spirit, the courage of your heart, and the truth of your soul. So Mia and Ben knelt before the guardians, grateful for their wisdom. Thank you, Mia whispered, her voice filled with humility. The guardians placed their hands over their heads, blessing them. Go now, keepers of the lantern. Protect the light, for it is the beacon of hope for all. With a final nod, the guardians vanished into the air, leaving Mia and Ben alone once again. Mia and Ben stood in the now quiet meadow, the morning sun breaking through the clouds. The trials were over, but their journey had only just begun. What now? Ben asked, looking to Mia. She held up the lantern, its light still strong and steady. Now we protect the light and ensure it never fades, she said. Together they began walking down the path that led back to Midnight Hill, knowing that their task was far from over. The darkness would always return, but as long as they carried the lantern, the light would never fade. As Mia and Ben reached the top of Midnight Hill, they looked out over the land below. The world was quiet now, the winds gentle, and the storm had passed. But in the distance, they could still feel the presence of something dark, something waiting. The lantern's light burned brightly in Mia's hands, its glow steady and unwavering. The darkness will return, Ben said quietly, but we'll be ready. Mia smiled softly, her heart full of determination. We will always be ready. The lantern will guide us, and as long as we stand together, the light will never fade. And so Mia and Ben stood watch over Midnight Hill, the eternal keepers of the lantern, knowing their journey would never truly end, but that they would always be the light in the darkness, guarding the world against the shadows. The days after the trials passed peacefully, but Mia couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Every night, as the lantern's glow filled their small cottage, she would stare out the window, her gaze fixed on the dark horizon. There was no visible storm, no sign of danger. Yet her instincts told her that the peace they had won was only temporary. The shadowy figure moved closer, its presence more menacing with each step. As it reached the hilltop, it stopped and spoke in a deep, eerie voice. The lantern belongs to the darkness now. It is time for the world to fall into shadow. Mia stepped forward, holding the lantern high, its light a stark contrast to the darkness that surrounded the figure. No, she said firmly. The light will never belong to you. It's meant to guide, not to be consumed. The figure laughed, a low, chilling sound. You think you can stop me? The lantern's power is nothing compared to the power of the void. The dark figure lunged forward, its hands reaching for the lantern. In a flash, Mia and Ben were surrounded by swirling shadows, the air thick with fear and uncertainty. Mia held the lantern in front of her, its light pushing back against the darkness, but the figure was strong. The shadows clung to her, trying to smother the light. You cannot fight what you do not understand, the figure hissed, its form twisting and changing, growing larger. Ben stepped forward, drawing the sword of light that had been passed down through the generations of lantern keepers. Together, we will protect the light, he said, his voice steady. With a mighty swing, he cut through the darkness, creating a path for the lantern's light to shine brighter. The battle raged on, the clash of light and dark filling the air with a deafening noise. Mia's arms were tired, and the lantern's light flickered as the dark figure pushed harder, but she refused to give up. She could feel the strength of the lantern, the power of all the keepers who had come before her, flowing through her. As the shadows closed in, she felt a surge of courage. "I will not let you win," she said, her voice trembling but firm. With one final burst of energy, she held the lantern out, and the light erupted, sending waves of brilliance through the darkness. The dark figure screamed, its form dissolving into nothingness as the light overwhelmed it. When the light faded, the night was still again. The wind had stopped, the shadows had disappeared, and the world was calm once more. Mia and Ben stood in the quiet aftermath, breathing heavily but unharmed. The lantern glowed softly in Mia's hands, its light now steady and unwavering. "The darkness has been driven back," Ben said quietly, looking at the horizon where the first light of dawn was beginning to break. Mia smiled, feeling the weight of their victory settle over her. "For now, at least," she said, "but we will always be ready to protect the light." Together they turned toward the rising sun, knowing that their journey was far from over, but that as long as they carried the lantern, the light would never fade. They were the keepers, and they would always stand watch over Midnight Hill, guarding the world from the shadows that threatened it. Days passed, and the calm that followed the battle settled over Midnight Hill. But Mia couldn't ignore the soft whispers on the wind, a sensation she couldn't shake. At night, she would hear faint voices carried by the breeze, distant yet familiar. She would stand at the window, listening carefully, but each time she tried to understand, the whispers faded. Ben noticed her growing unease. "What's troubling you?" Mia he asked one evening as they sat together by the lantern's glow. She hesitated, trying to explain the strange feeling gnawing at her. "I think the wind carries messages," she said quietly, "but I can't quite make them out. It's as if something is trying to reach us." Ben looked out at the darkening sky. "Maybe it's a warning. Whatever it is, we'll face it together one night." The whispers became louder, more insistent, like the wind itself was speaking directly to her. The lantern flickered and dimmed, its light struggling against the dark air that seemed to surround them. Mia grabbed the lantern tightly, feeling its warmth begin to wane. Suddenly, the light pulsed, and a strange voice echoed in her mind. "The lantern's light is not only for you, Mia. There are others, far beyond this hill, who need it. The world is in greater danger than you realize." The voice faded as quickly as it came, leaving Mia breathless and confused. "What does it mean?" she whispered, her grip tightening on the lantern. Ben looked at her, his expression solemn. "We need to find out. Whatever is happening, we need to prepare." The next morning, Mia and Ben set out from Midnight Hill, the lantern's glow illuminating their way as they ventured into the unknown. The world beyond the hill was vast and filled with strange sights, forests that stretched endlessly, rivers that sparkled like silver, and mountains that reached into the sky. But there was something else too, something Mia couldn't put her finger on. As they traveled, they came across villages where the people whispered in fear of dark clouds that had appeared in the sky, strange creatures that lurked in the shadows, and a growing sense of dread that seemed to cover the land. The lantern's glow was weak here, barely flickering. "We need to find where the light is needed most," Mia said, her voice filled with determination. "The lantern can't help everyone if it's too weak. We need to restore its power after days of traveling." Mia and Ben reached a forgotten temple deep in the heart of an ancient forest. The temple was overgrown with vines, and its stones seemed weathered by time. Yet there was an energy about it, a sense of power that pulsed beneath the earth. "This is it," Mia said, her heart racing. This is where the lantern's true power lies. They entered the temple, the air cool and damp, and followed a winding path until they reached a chamber where the walls were covered with strange symbols. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and upon it was a crystal that pulsed with a brilliant light. The moment Mia touched it, the lantern in her hand flared to life, brighter than it had ever been before. As Mia held the crystal, a surge of energy flowed through her, and the lantern's light grew stronger, filling the temple with warmth. The darkness that had clouded the land for so long began to recede, replaced by a soft, golden glow. Mia could feel the balance of the world shifting, and for the first time in a long while, she felt hope. "The light is returning," Ben whispered, awe in his voice. The crystal's light merged with the lantern's, creating a beacon that could be seen for miles around. It was as if the very earth was breathing a sigh of relief. "We've done it," Mia said, her voice filled with a quiet triumph. "The lantern is whole again. Now, it will guide us to where it's needed most." With the lantern's power fully restored, Mia and Ben left the temple and began their journey back to Midnight Hill. The world around them seemed brighter, the air fresher, and the once ominous shadows had faded away. They knew that their task was not over, but they also knew they were not alone. The light they carried would guide them, and the world would always have a protector in the form of the Lantern Keepers. As they reached the hilltop, Mia stood tall, holding the lantern high. "The light will never fade," she promised, her voice filled with certainty. "We will always be its keepers, and we will protect it, no matter what comes." The wind whispered gently through the trees, as if agreeing with her words. And beneath the glow of the lantern, Mia and Ben knew that their journey would continue, for the light would always need guardians, and Midnight Hill would always be the place where the lantern's flame would burn brightest. The days following the restoration of the lantern's power were peaceful, but Mia and Ben knew that it was only a matter of time before darkness would once again challenge them. They stayed vigilant, watching over Midnight Hill and protecting the lantern, which had become brighter than ever. But strange things started happening. One evening, as they stood together by the lantern's light, a shadow passed over the hilltop, fleeting yet unmistakable. Mia's heart skipped a beat. "Did you see that?" she whispered. Ben turned, his eyes scanning the horizon. "It was too fast to catch," he said, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. "We must be ready for whatever is coming next." The following night, the atmosphere grew thick with a strange mist that seemed to seep from the earth itself. It wrapped around the trees and crept toward the lantern's light. Mia and Ben stood at the edge of their home, their eyes narrowing as the mist thickened. It wasn't like the fog they had known before. It was dark, unnatural, and seemed to carry a whisper of danger. "This isn't just mist," Ben said, his voice grim. "It's a sign of something more powerful than what we faced before." Mia gripped the lantern, its light flickering in the encroaching gloom. "We need to find the source of this mist. We can't let it get any closer." With determination, they set out into the thickening fog, their steps cautious but resolute. As they walked deeper into the mist, Mia's heart pounded in her chest. The light from the lantern barely cut through the fog, leaving only a faint glow around them. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the air became. A cold wind blew through the trees, carrying with it the scent of something ancient and dark. Suddenly they heard a low growl, followed by a sharp, rasping breath. Mia's eyes widened as she searched the shadows around them. From the mist emerged a figure, its face obscured by a dark hood, and its form barely visible in the fog. "Who are you?" Ben demanded, drawing the sword of light. The figure stepped forward, its voice echoing through the mist. "I am the one who watches the lantern, and you are not its rightful keepers." The figure's words sent a chill through Mia and Ben. "What do you mean?" Mia asked, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. The figure tilted its head, a shadowy grin forming on its face. "The lantern's light belongs to the void," it said. "It was never meant to guide, it was meant to consume. You cannot protect it forever." Mia felt a surge of anger. "We will protect the lantern," she said defiantly, her grip on it tightening. "Its light will never fall to darkness." The figure laughed, the sound hollow and echoing in the fog. "We shall see," it said. The mist is only the beginning. With a swift motion, the figure vanished into the mist, leaving Mia and Ben standing in stunned silence. Mia and Ben returned to Midnight Hill, their minds racing with questions. Who was the figure they had encountered, and what did it mean that the lantern was meant to consume, not guide? The mist had faded for now, but they knew it was only a temporary reprieve. The darkness was not gone, it was merely waiting, biding its time. "We need to find out more about the lantern," Ben said, his voice full of urgency. "There's a hidden truth, something we've missed." Mia nodded, her gaze fixed on the lantern, which now seemed more mysterious than ever. "We'll go to the elders," she said. "They might know more about the history of the lantern and its true power." Mia and Ben journeyed to the farthest village in search of the elders, ancient beings who had lived for centuries and carried the knowledge of the world's deepest secrets. As they approached the village, they felt the air grow heavy once more, the feeling of danger ever present. The elders lived in a grand, stone building surrounded by thick trees. Inside, the air was cool, and the walls were lined with ancient scrolls and books. An elder, her hair silver and her eyes wise with age, greeted them. "The lantern has been passed down through many generations," she said, her voice soft but clear. "But its true purpose is hidden, even from the keepers. The mist you encountered is a part of the darkness that seeks to take the lantern's power. If you do not uncover the truth soon, the light will fade forever." The elder's words echoed in Mia and Ben's minds as they sat in the stone chamber, surrounded by the ancient scrolls. "The mist is only a fraction of the darkness that seeks to control the lantern's power," the elder continued. "You must seek the ancient writings of the first keeper. They are hidden in the caves beneath Midnight Hill." Mia and Ben exchanged glances. "The first keeper?" Mia asked, her voice filled with wonder and worry. The elder nodded gravely. "The first keeper was entrusted with the lantern's greatest secret. But over time, this knowledge has been lost, and only those with a pure heart and unwavering determination can retrieve it." Determined to uncover the truth, Mia and Ben made their way back to Midnight Hill. The journey to the caves was treacherous, the path winding through dense woods and steep cliffs. As they approached the entrance to the caves, a cold wind swept through the trees, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble with an ominous energy. "This is it," Ben said, his voice low. "The place where the truth lies." Mia nodded, gripping the lantern tightly as she stepped into the dark mouth of the cave. The air inside was thick with dust and the scent of earth. The walls were covered with ancient symbols, and faint light flickered in the distance, like the lantern itself guiding them deeper into the darkness. They followed the faint glow deeper into the cave until they came upon a hidden chamber. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and atop it lay a large stone tablet. The tablet was covered in strange, glowing symbols. Mia and Ben approached cautiously, their hearts racing. As they touched the stone, the symbols began to shift, revealing the true history of the lantern and the darkness that sought to control it. The lantern was created by the ancient ones the tablet read. It was meant to hold the balance between light and darkness. But over time, its power grew, and those who sought to control it twisted its purpose. The mist is a manifestation of this darkness, and it will continue to grow until the lantern is destroyed or claimed. As Mia read the tablet's message aloud, the cave seemed to tremble, and the light from the lantern flickered violently. The shadows around them grew deeper, swirling with a dark energy that seemed to pull them in. "We have to stop it," Mia whispered, her voice filled with fear. "We can't let the lantern fall into the wrong hands." Ben stood beside her, his face determined. "We won't let it happen. We'll protect it, no matter what." But as the words left his lips, the cave began to shake, and the dark mist seeped from the walls, swirling around them. A voice, low and cold, echoed through the cave. "You cannot stop what has already begun. The lantern will be mine." Out of the shadows emerged the figure they had encountered before, the hooded figure that had warned them of the lantern's true nature. "You again," Mia said, her voice full of defiance. "We'll never let you have it." The figure laughed, its voice a chilling sound. "You think you can stop me? The darkness will consume everything. The lantern's light is nothing but a fleeting illusion." With a swift motion, the figure raised its hand, and the mist thickened, pulling at Mia and Ben. The lantern flickered weakly, struggling to hold its light against the overwhelming force of the dark energy. Mia's heart raced as the darkness surrounded them, but she refused to give up. She closed her eyes, focusing on the lantern, on the light that had guided her and Ben this far. "This light is mine to protect," she thought. With a deep breath, Mia raised the lantern high, and a surge of energy flowed from it, brighter and stronger than before. The dark mist recoiled as if in fear, and the hooded figure stumbled back. "The light will always overcome the darkness," Mia said, her voice steady. "It's not just the lantern that has power, it's the light within us all." As the words left her, the light from the lantern exploded, engulfing the cave in a radiant glow. The mist evaporated, and the shadows melted away. The figure disappeared into the light, its voice fading into nothingness. The light from the lantern slowly faded, leaving the cave in an eerie silence. Mia and Ben stood motionless, their hearts still racing from the confrontation. The mist had vanished, but the air was thick with the remnants of the battle. As the glow from the lantern dimmed, it became clear that they had won for now. "We did it," Mia whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. Ben nodded, but his expression was serious. "The darkness is gone, but it's not over. The lantern has power we don't fully understand. We need to learn more." Mia looked at the lantern, its light flickering gently as if in agreement. "Then we'll keep searching," she said. "We'll find the answers we need." Mia and Ben left the caves with a renewed sense of purpose. The journey had been difficult, and the dangers they faced were far from over. But they knew one thing for certain: the lantern's power had a greater purpose, one that neither the darkness nor the shadows could take away. "We need to go back to the village," Ben said. "The elders might know more about what we just uncovered. The truth about the lantern and its power must be revealed before it's too late." Mia agreed. "It's time to face what's ahead, no matter how difficult it may be." With the lantern held firmly in their hands, they began their journey back, ready to uncover the final pieces of the mystery. When they returned to the village, the elder who had guided them before was waiting for them. Her face was grave as they approached. "You've returned," she said, her eyes searching their faces. "And you've learned the truth. Haven't you?" Mia nodded. "We know about the lantern's true power. We also learned about the darkness that has been trying to control it." The elder's expression grew darker. "The darkness you faced is but a fragment of something much larger. You must be prepared. The lantern is more than just a light, it is a key to something beyond this world." Mia and Ben listened carefully as the elder spoke, her voice low and steady. The lantern was not created by any one person. It was forged by the Ancient Ones, beings who existed long before this world was born. They built it to maintain the balance between light and darkness. But over time, those who sought power began to twist its purpose, the mist, Mia said, her voice filled with understanding. "It's part of the darkness that tries to break the balance," the elder nodded. "Yes. And now, the lantern must choose its next keeper, one who will protect the balance. The darkness will rise again, stronger than before, and only the true keeper can stop it." The elder's words weighed heavily on Mia and Ben. "But how will we know who the true keeper is?" Ben asked, his voice full of uncertainty. The elder sighed, her eyes filled with ancient wisdom. "You will know when the time comes. The lantern will reveal its true keeper through a test. Only then will you understand the full extent of its power." Mia and Ben exchanged a glance. They both knew that they had a long and dangerous road ahead. "We will do whatever it takes," Mia said, her voice firm. "We'll protect the lantern and stop the darkness from spreading." The elder gave them a small, knowing smile. "Your courage will guide you. But remember, this is just the beginning. The true test lies ahead, and only the purest heart will be able to harness the lantern's light." As Mia and Ben left the elder's dwelling, they felt both a sense of responsibility and a deeper connection to the lantern. The journey was far from over. They had only just begun to understand the full scope of their mission. With the lantern's light shining brightly in their hands, they knew they had to face whatever challenges awaited them, no matter how dark or dangerous they might be. Mia and Ben continued their journey, now more determined than ever. The elder's words haunted them as they walked through the dense forest towards the mountain, where the lantern's true keeper was to be chosen. The air was thick with tension, and each step felt heavier than the last. "We have to prove ourselves," Mia said, breaking the silence. "The lantern will reveal the true keeper through a test," Ben nodded, though his expression was uncertain. "I'm not sure we're ready. But if we don't try, the darkness will take over." The path ahead was filled with unknown dangers, but they couldn't turn back now. They had come too far to fail. As they approached the mountain, the atmosphere grew even more foreboding. The wind howled, and the trees bent as if to shield them from something unseen. At the base of the mountain, they found a stone archway, and as they stepped through, the world around them seemed to shift. The forest fell silent, and the air turned cold. Suddenly, the lantern in Mia's hands began to glow brighter, casting long shadows on the ground. "This is it," Ben whispered. "The test is starting." They stepped forward, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. A voice, deep and ancient, echoed through the air. "Only those who truly understand the balance of light and dark may proceed. Show me your heart." The voice grew louder as a dark mist began to swirl around them. The lantern flickered, struggling against the darkness. Mia and Ben stood still, holding their ground. "What do you mean?" "Show you our heart," Mia asked, her voice shaking with uncertainty. The mist parted, revealing a shadowy figure. "Your heart holds the key to the lantern's power," the figure said. "Are you truly worthy to bear it?" The figure's presence was overwhelming, and the mist seemed to pull at their very souls. "What is this test?" Ben asked, his voice filled with fear. "It's not about strength," the figure replied, "but about understanding. Light and dark are two sides of the same coin. Do you understand their true purpose?" The mist began to take shape, forming images from their past. Mia saw her childhood, moments filled with both happiness and pain. Ben saw the loss of his family, the darkness that had consumed his life for years. The images twisted and turned, showing their deepest fears, the very things they tried to forget. Mia felt her heart race as the images of her past overwhelmed her. "This is what the lantern has shown me," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "The balance of light and dark is within us all. We cannot escape our shadows, but we must accept them." Ben's voice trembled. "The darkness. It's not something to destroy. It's something we must live with and learn from." As the last of the mist faded, the figure before them smiled. "You have learned well, but the test is not yet over." The figure's form began to dissolve, and in its place appeared a glowing orb of light. "This is the heart of the lantern. It will reveal your true selves. Only those who can accept the balance of light and dark can claim it." Mia and Ben stepped forward, reaching for the orb together. As their hands touched it, a surge of energy passed through them, filling them with warmth. The lantern in Mia's hands shone brightly, its light stronger than ever before. "You have passed the test," the voice said. "You are the true keepers now." With the test behind them, Mia and Ben stood at the foot of the mountain, the lantern glowing with a steady, powerful light. The dark mist had disappeared, but they knew this was not the end. The journey ahead was still uncertain, and many challenges lay before them. "This is just the beginning," Mia said, her voice filled with determination. "We've proven ourselves, but the lantern's power is greater than we can understand. We need to protect it and keep the balance." Ben nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "We will face whatever comes, together." The lantern's light flickered once more, and they knew, in that moment, that they were ready to embrace their new destiny as the keepers of the lantern. As Mia and Ben descended the mountain, the weight of their new responsibilities settled upon them. The lantern's power was now a part of them, and with it came an overwhelming sense of duty. The village was in sight, but the quiet peace they had once known was now a distant memory. Dark clouds gathered above the hills, as if warning them of the challenges ahead. "We faced the first trial," Mia said, her voice steady but tinged with concern. "But the true battle is yet to come. The darkness won't just fade away." Ben's expression was serious as he held the lantern closer to his chest. "We must be ready. I feel it." The storm is coming. As they entered the village, they noticed something unusual. People were whispering, their eyes filled with fear. The air felt thick with anticipation, as if something was lurking just beyond their sight. A figure stepped out of the shadows, tall, cloaked in black, and carrying an aura of menace. "Mia," Ben the figure spoke, his voice smooth and chilling. "I've been waiting for you." His eyes glinted with a strange, unsettling light. "The lantern you carry is not a mere object of light. It is the key to something much darker than you can imagine." Mia's heart skipped a beat. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. The stranger stepped closer, his presence almost suffocating. "I am someone who has walked this land for centuries," he said. "The lantern you protect is tied to an ancient prophecy. The balance it holds is fragile, and once the darkness rises, nothing will be able to stop it." Ben stepped forward, his hand instinctively reaching for the lantern. "What do you want from us?" the stranger smiled, but it was a cold, knowing smile. "I am not your enemy," he replied, "but I am the bearer of a warning. There are those who seek the lantern's power, and they will stop at nothing to claim it. You must be prepared to face them." Mia and Ben exchanged uneasy glances. "What should we do?" Mia asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. The stranger's expression softened, just for a moment. "You must seek the ancient texts. They hold the answers you need, the key to understanding the true power of the lantern." He handed them a small, weathered scroll. "This will guide you. But be careful, the path is dangerous, and the darkness is always watching." With that, the stranger vanished as mysteriously as he had appeared, leaving only the weight of his words behind. Mia and Ben stood in silence, their thoughts racing. "We need to find those texts," Ben said, breaking the silence. "The answers are out there, and we need to find them before the darkness does." The scroll led them to a long-forgotten library, hidden deep within the forest. Its entrance was concealed by thick vines and the passage of time. As Mia and Ben pushed the vines aside, they entered a dimly lit room filled with ancient books and scrolls. Dust hung in the air, and the walls seemed to echo with the whispers of the past. "This is it," Mia said, her voice filled with awe. "This is where the answers lie." They began to search through the dusty shelves, each book more ancient and fragile than the last. Hours passed as they uncovered fragments of forgotten knowledge, piecing together the history of the lantern and the darkness it was meant to keep at bay. After what felt like days of searching, they finally uncovered a tome that seemed to hold the key to everything. Its pages were old and brittle, but the words were still legible. The truth was revealed: the lantern was not only a source of light, but a vessel that held a powerful entity bound by ancient magic. If the lantern ever fell into the wrong hands, the entity would be released, and the world would be consumed by darkness. The lantern wasn't just created to protect the world from darkness, Ben said, his voice filled with disbelief. It was created to keep this entity trapped. And now we're the ones who have to keep it sealed. Mia looked at the lantern in her hands, a sense of dread settling over her. We need to protect it, no matter the cost. Mia and Ben left the hidden library, their minds reeling with the truth they had uncovered. The entity bound within the lantern was far more dangerous than they had imagined. As they made their way back through the forest, a sudden rustling sound made them stop. From the shadows, a figure emerged. It was a woman, cloaked in white, with an air of calm power surrounding her. "You've learned much," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But there is still more to understand." Mia and Ben exchanged wary glances, unsure of who this woman was. "Who are you?" Ben asked, his hand instinctively gripping the lantern. The woman smiled faintly. "I am the guardian of the old magic. I have watched over the lantern for centuries, ensuring that the darkness never escapes. But now, the time has come for you to truly understand its power." The woman led them deeper into the forest, where an ancient stone circle stood, covered in moss and vines. The air felt different here, charged with an energy Mia and Ben could not explain. As they stepped into the circle, the woman began to speak in a language they didn't understand, her voice reverberating through the ground. This is where the magic was first created, she explained. The lantern was forged not just to hold the entity, but to prevent a greater darkness from consuming the world. The power within it is both a gift and a curse. To control it, you must understand the balance of life and death, light and shadow. Mia's mind was racing. How do we control it? How do we prevent the darkness from breaking free? The woman's gaze was intense as she looked at them both. The key lies in your hearts. You must be willing to face the darkness within yourselves before you can stand against the one in the lantern. Mia and Ben stood in silence, the weight of the woman's words settling over them. They had come so far, yet the path ahead was still uncertain. What do you mean by facing the darkness within? Mia asked, her voice barely a whisper. The woman's expression softened. Each of you carries a shadow, something that pulls at you from within. If you cannot face that darkness, you will never be able to control the lantern's power. It will consume you. Ben felt a cold chill run through him. He had been running from his past, from the guilt and loss that had shaped him. He had never truly faced the pain of losing everything. Mia, too, had her own demons, the fears and doubts that she had buried deep within. Together, you must confront these shadows, the woman continued. Only then will you be able to wield the lantern's power. That night, Mia and Ben sat in the stone circle, the lantern between them, its light flickering in the dark. As they stared into its glow, they felt a pull, something dark and cold, like a storm rising within them. The woman's words echoed in their minds. Face your shadows. Mia closed her eyes, and the images of her past rushed back: the loss of her parents, the fear of being alone, the self-doubt that had always lingered. She felt herself tremble as the shadows of her memories came to life, swirling around her. But this time, instead of running, she embraced them. She accepted the pain, the loss, and the fear. Beside her, Ben did the same. His memories of his family, of the darkness that had consumed him for so long, flooded his mind. But he didn't turn away. He faced the shadows, acknowledging them, no longer afraid. As Mia and Ben stood together in the stone circle, their hearts heavy with the weight of their pasts, something began to change. The lantern's light grew brighter, its glow filling the space around them. Yet it was not just light, it was balanced with the darkness within them. The woman stood silently, watching. You have passed the first trial, she said softly. The darkness inside you no longer controls you. Now, the lantern's power is yours to command. The light from the lantern flickered once more, then steadied, casting a steady, calm glow. Mia and Ben looked at each other, a newfound understanding between them. The lantern was not just a tool, it was a reflection of their own strength. Together, they had faced their fears and emerged stronger. The woman stepped back, her expression proud but solemn. The first test is over, but there are more trials ahead. You must journey to the heart of the darkness, where the entity is bound. Only there can you truly understand the full power of the lantern. Mia and Ben nodded, ready for what lay ahead. They had faced their shadows, and now they were prepared to face the darkness that threatened the world. The path forward was unclear, but together they would protect the lantern and with it, the balance of light and dark. The storm that had gathered above Midnight Hill was only the beginning, and Mia and Ben would stand against it, no matter what came. With the lantern now burning steadily between them, Mia and Ben set off towards the heart of the darkness. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, and the further they traveled, the colder it became. The forest around them was dark, its trees twisted and gnarled as though they had been shaped by the very shadows they were now confronting. "We need to be careful," Ben whispered, his voice barely audible against the wind. "I can feel something watching us," Mia nodded, her grip on the lantern tightening. She felt it too, the weight of the darkness closing in around them. The path they were on was forbidden, a place that had been kept hidden for centuries. Yet here they were, walking straight into the unknown. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the whispers began. Faint at first, they grew louder with every step. The wind carried voices that seemed to come from the trees themselves. Mia's heart pounded in her chest. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's the winds," Ben replied. "They carry the voices of those who have wandered too far into this place. They never returned." The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if calling them to a fate they couldn't escape. Mia shook her head. "We can't turn back now. We've come too far," but with each whisper, the air seemed heavier. The lantern flickered as though it too could sense the growing danger. The further they walked, the thicker the fog became, curling around their feet like tendrils of darkness. The lantern's light barely cut through the mist, casting eerie shadows that danced along the edges of their path. Then through the fog, a shape appeared, a figure, tall and cloaked in black, standing motionless in front of them. Mia froze, her heart racing. Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure did not respond. It simply stood there, watching them. Ben stepped forward, his hand on the lantern. "We don't want trouble," he said firmly, but the figure remained silent. Suddenly, the figure's eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and Mia gasped. "It's not human," she said, her voice filled with dread. The figure finally spoke, its voice low and gravelly. "You seek the heart of the darkness, but you are not ready. The lantern's light will not save you here." Mia and Ben stood their ground, but the fear within them was palpable. "We've come to protect the lantern, to keep the darkness from escaping," Mia said, trying to sound confident. "We're not afraid." The figure laughed, a hollow, echoing sound that sent chills down their spines. "Fear is your greatest enemy here. If you cannot conquer it, the darkness will consume you. The lantern cannot protect you forever." The figure stepped forward, vanishing into the fog as quickly as it had appeared. "Keep moving," Ben urged, his voice tense. "We have to keep going." They continued down the path, the fog thickening around them with every step. After what felt like hours, they finally reached a dark cave nestled into the side of a mountain. The entrance was wide and ominous, as if the cave itself were a mouth waiting to swallow them whole. "This is it," Mia said, her voice shaking. "The heart of the darkness. The entity is inside." She glanced at Ben, who nodded. "We're ready. Let's go." As they entered the cave, the temperature dropped, and a low hum filled the air. The walls of the cave were covered in strange markings, symbols that seemed to shift and change as they looked at them. The deeper they went, the more the hum grew, as if the cave itself were alive. At the very end of the cave, they found what they had been searching for, a massive, glowing crystal suspended in midair. It pulsed with an eerie light, and as Mia and Ben approached, they could feel the darkness radiating from it, cold and malevolent. "This is it," Ben said, his voice filled with awe and fear. "The source of the darkness." Mia held the lantern up high, its light flickering but still strong. "We need to destroy it," she said. "This is the only way to stop the entity from breaking free." As they stood there, the ground began to shake, and a low, rumbling growl filled the air. The entity had awakened. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the crystal pulsed more violently. A deep, guttural growl echoed from the depths of the cave, and Mia and Ben could feel the presence of something ancient and powerful stirring. The air grew thick with dread. "It's waking up," Mia whispered, clutching the lantern tighter. The crystal's light intensified, bathing the cave in an unnatural glow. Slowly, a shadow began to rise from the ground in front of them, its form dark and formless, shifting with every passing second. Ben stepped back, his eyes wide in terror. "We have to stop it now." Mia's heart raced as she raised the lantern higher. "The lantern can still protect us. We just need to focus," but the shadow didn't seem to care about the light. It was drawn to the crystal, feeding off its dark energy. The shadow surged forward, and for a moment it seemed to devour the very light of the lantern. Mia's hand shook as she struggled to keep the flame alive. The lantern flickered weakly, its light waning in the overwhelming darkness. Ben grabbed her arm. "We need to destroy the crystal now," but as they rushed forward, the shadow lashed out, its tendrils like sharp, invisible blades. Mia cried out as one of them brushed past her arm, cold and burning at the same time. The pain was unbearable. "We have to fight back," Ben shouted. He threw a rock at the shadow, but it passed straight through, useless. "It's too strong," with desperation in her eyes. Mia gripped the lantern tightly, feeling the last spark of its light flicker within. "I won't let it win," she muttered through gritted teeth. She stepped forward, raising the lantern as if it were a weapon. The shadow recoiled from the light, but it wasn't enough to stop it. It continued to grow, its form now towering over them. "This is it," Mia said, her voice low, almost to herself. "If the lantern can't stop it, we have to sacrifice it. We'll use the light to destroy the crystal." Ben hesitated, looking at her with fear in his eyes. "Are you sure?" "The lantern is all we have," but Mia knew what had to be done. She stepped closer to the crystal, knowing the light from the lantern would be their only chance. Mia held the lantern high, walking slowly towards the crystal. As she did, the shadow followed her, its shape shifting, angry at the threat of the light. "Stay back," Mia commanded, though her voice quivered. She could feel the lantern growing warmer, as if it too was realizing the gravity of the moment. With one final, determined step, Mia threw the lantern toward the crystal. It flew through the air, glowing brightly as it passed through the shadow's tendrils. The shadow screeched, its form cracking and breaking apart as the light hit the crystal. For a moment, everything was still. Then, the crystal shattered, sending a burst of light so bright that it blinded them both. Mia and Ben fell to the ground, shielding their eyes from the explosion of energy. When the light finally dimmed, the cave was quiet. The shadow was gone, disintegrated into nothingness. The crystal was reduced to dust, its dark energy vanished. Mia opened her eyes slowly, disbelief crossing her face. The darkness had lifted. "We did it," Ben breathed, looking around. The air, once thick and oppressive, now felt lighter. The cave was still dark, but the weight of the evil presence was gone. Mia nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "It's over." The lantern. "We used it to end the darkness." The lantern's glow had faded to nothing, its light now extinguished. Yet, despite the loss, Mia felt a sense of peace she hadn't known before. The nightmare was over, and the hill would finally be free. As Mia and Ben left the cave, the sun began to rise on the horizon, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and pink. The forest, once twisted and dark, now felt alive again, as if the land itself was waking from a long nightmare. "We should never forget what happened here," Ben said, glancing at the hill behind them. "But we can't let the world forget either. The lantern's light will live on in the stories." Mia smiled softly, looking at the hill one last time. The lantern keeper's work is done. But the stories will carry on. And with that, they walked away, leaving Midnight Hill behind, its secrets now safe in the past. As Mia and Ben walked further away from Midnight Hill, the weight of their adventure slowly began to lift from their shoulders. They felt lighter, as if a long, dark cloud had finally passed. The sunlight warmed their faces, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the world seemed peaceful. "It's strange," Mia said softly, looking over her shoulder at the hill one last time. "I thought the darkness would always be there, but now it's just gone." Ben nodded, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "Maybe some darkness is meant to be defeated. The lantern's light will guide others when needed." Together they walked toward the horizon, leaving the past behind and stepping into a future where the shadows of Midnight Hill could no longer reach them. As the years passed, the story of the Lantern Keeper and the battle on Midnight Hill became a legend passed down through generations. The light of the lantern, now a symbol of courage and sacrifice, remained etched in the hearts of those who heard the tale. One evening, an old traveler arrived at the village near the hill, holding a lantern. He gazed up at the now peaceful hill, a smile touching his lips as he whispered, "The keeper's light will never fade." And so, the legend lived on, carried by the whispers of the wind, the rustling leaves, and the flicker of lanterns in the night, forever guarding the secrets of Midnight Hill. Years later, when the village had long forgotten the horrors of Midnight Hill, a new traveler arrived. This one, unlike the others, did not come to the village to seek refuge or warmth. Instead, he was drawn to the stories, the whispers of a legend so old that most had forgotten. As the night fell, he stood on the outskirts of the village, looking toward the hill. He could see nothing in the darkness, but the faintest flicker of light in the distance caught his eye. The lantern? His heart skipped a beat. Could it be true? Determined, the traveler set off toward Midnight Hill. With every step, the wind seemed to whisper his name, urging him forward. The memories of the past, the shadows, and the Lantern Keeper seemed to call out from the depths of the earth. The journey up the hill was long, the path overgrown with vines and twisted roots. The traveler had no lantern, yet somehow he wasn't afraid of the darkness. There was a pull within him, a sense of purpose that kept him moving forward. As he neared the top, the air grew colder, and the whispers became louder. "It is time," they said. "The light must be rekindled at the summit of the hill." He paused. There, in the center of the clearing, the remnants of the old crystal lay shattered, long forgotten. But something else was there, an object that caught the light of the moon. It was a lantern, old yet gleaming with a strange energy. The traveler knelt beside the lantern, his fingers brushing against its surface. The moment he touched it, a surge of energy ran through him, filling him with warmth. It was the lantern's power, calling to him, choosing him as the new keeper. He understood then. The light had not truly faded. It had been waiting for the right soul to carry it once more. The traveler lifted the lantern, and the light inside flickered back to life, brighter than ever before. The whispers in the wind seemed to settle, as if the hill itself had been waiting for this moment. The traveler's heart swelled with the realization that his journey had only just begun. The lantern keeper's legacy would live on. But as the lantern's light brightened, something else stirred beneath the surface. The ground beneath him rumbled, and the air thickened. The shadow, the one that had once haunted the hill, was not gone. It had merely been waiting, biding its time. A low growl echoed from the depths, and the traveler felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. The shadow was back, stronger than before, drawn to the light. But this time he was ready. The lantern's glow surged brighter, casting the shadow back into the darkness. The traveler raised the lantern higher, chanting softly, and the light spread across the hill, pushing the darkness further away. "This is my watch now," he whispered, feeling the power of the lantern fill his being. The battle was not easy. The shadow fought fiercely, as though it had a personal vendetta against the light. But the lantern keeper was not alone. He felt the presence of the ancient guardians, those who had come before him, supporting him from beyond the veil. With every wave of the lantern's light, the shadow weakened, until finally, with a loud cry, it was banished. The hill fell silent once more. The traveler stood there, breathing heavily, but victorious. The darkness was gone, for now. The lantern's glow softened, its mission complete for the moment. But the keeper knew this was only a temporary peace. The shadow would return one day. But when it did, he would be ready. As the dawn light broke over the hill, the traveler looked out across the peaceful land. The lantern now burned steadily in his hands, a symbol of hope, courage, and the eternal battle between light and dark. His journey had just begun. He knew he could never truly leave Midnight Hill, for the darkness would always be waiting, always seeking to return. But as long as he held the lantern, he would stand watch, guarding the hill from the shadows that lurked below. The wind whispered softly through the trees, carrying the ancient tale of the lantern keeper, a story that would live on forever, told to each new keeper who would one day walk the same path. Months passed, and the traveler had become accustomed to the quiet solitude of Midnight Hill. He found peace in his role as the lantern keeper, but he knew that the world outside the hill continued to move on. Every so often, travelers would pass through the nearby village, unaware of the ancient power that lay beyond the hill's ridge. One evening, as the lantern's light flickered in his hands, a voice whispered in the wind. It is time. The traveler paused, the familiar voice of the hill calling to him. A new journey awaited, a new chapter to be written in the tale of the lantern. The keeper knew that he could not stay forever. The light of the lantern was not meant to be confined to one place. It had a greater purpose, and he was just the vessel carrying it. With a steady breath, he gathered his belongings and prepared to leave the hill behind. The lantern's light pulsed with energy, as if urging him to move. The traveler climbed down the hill, his heart beating faster with each step. He wasn't sure where the light would lead him, but he knew he had to follow it. As he walked, the path before him seemed to unfold, revealing hidden trails and forgotten lands. The lantern burned brightly, casting a protective glow around him. The closer he got to the village, the stronger the pull became. He was meant to bring the lantern's light to others, to show them the way. But he was also aware that there was something darker lurking on the horizon. The shadow was not gone for good. It would follow him, waiting for the right moment to strike again. But the keeper wasn't afraid. He had the light, and as long as he carried it, he knew he could stand against anything. When the traveler reached the village, he was greeted with curiosity. The people, though wary of his appearance, could sense the power emanating from the lantern. Word quickly spread of his arrival, and before long, many came to seek his guidance. It was then that he met a young girl, no older than 12, with eyes full of wonder and fear. She told him of her dreams of dark figures that haunted her every night. She had heard the stories of Midnight Hill, but she never believed them until now. "I'm scared," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Can you help me?" The lantern keeper knelt down and placed a hand on her shoulder. "The darkness can only harm you if you allow it," he said. "Together we can keep the light alive." That night, as the lantern keeper and the girl sat by the fire, a strange chill filled the air. The shadows around them seemed to stretch unnaturally, swirling like dark mist. The keeper's heart raced, and he knew the shadow had returned. The wind howled through the village, and a figure emerged from the darkness, a shadowy figure with glowing eyes. The villagers screamed in fear and fled into their homes. The keeper stood tall, raising the lantern high. "You will not take this village," he called out, his voice steady. The shadow lunged at him, but the lantern's light grew brighter, stronger, pushing it back with each step. The keeper had never felt the lantern burn so intensely before. It was as if the light was alive, fighting alongside him. In that moment, the keeper knew that his journey was far from over. He had a duty, not just to protect the hill, but to protect all who were threatened by the darkness. As the light from the lantern continued to shine brightly, the keeper knew his journey was far from over. The shadows may return, but as long as the lantern burned, there would always be hope. And with that hope, he would stand guard, protecting all who sought the light. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of Midnight Hill. The lantern keeper's vigil continues, and his story is one that will live on, told by those who remember the light in the darkness. Until next time, remember the light is always stronger than the shadows. Good night and sweet dreams.